Advantage, powered by Devon. My mission is to drive education, adoption, and integration of AI and data products and services. Today, we stand at the forefront of a technological revolution. Artificial intelligence, once a distant dream, is now at our fingertips, transforming how we think about and how we integrate technology into our products and services. However, the journey from concept to tangible return on investment in AI can be complex and challenging. Our event today is designed to demystify this journey. So we aim to bridge the gap between AI's technical aspects and its practical, value-driven application in product management. Our focus is not just on the what and how of AI, but more importantly, on the why, ensuring that AI integration is not just a buzzword, but a driver of real product value. So what can you expect today? We'll be discussing core concepts, and we'll start by exploring what AI is, and importantly, isn't, in product terms, simplifying technical terms to boost your confidence in AI discussions, and addressing the nuances of measuring AI's return on investment. How do you identify opportunities? We'll delve into where and how to spot AI opportunities in your products, discuss common pitfalls, and provide you with 3 powerful questions to evaluate every AI opportunity. We will be providing concrete examples, and we'll share real-life stories, including both successes and failures, to give you a comprehensive view on AI implementation. And to finish, we'll hold a Q&A session. We've allocated ample time for your questions, ensuring you leave with clarity and actionable insights. So why does this all matter? Whether you're a product manager, owner, portfolio manager, or just someone keen to harness the power of AI, this webinar has been tailored for you. We promise clarity on AI integrations, expert insights, actionable takeaways, and relevance for all, regardless of your prior experience with AI. Our promise, by the end of this session, you will have a clearer understanding of what AI means in product terms, how to identify and leverage AI opportunities, and how to anticipate and overcome challenges in AI integration. So let's dive into the AI landscape with confidence. Thank you for joining us today. Let's begin. Sean, please kick us off.
Thank you very much.
Just one quick note. I'm Tom, and I will be helping today with the Q&A session, and I'm just pasting the URL into the chat, and you can use it for asking any questions that you would have, also voting for other questions that you'd like to see answered. And also, it seems that there is a problem with Zoom that everyone is dialing with 2 names, so sorry about that. We'll fix that next time. Over to you, Sean.
Thanks very much. Cool. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. My name's Sean. I lead Devon's AI and data efforts globally. I've been working in data-centric roles for about 20 years now, everything from basically glorified data janitor all the way to advising large enterprises on their AI strategy. And 2023 has been really an incredible year for anyone with an interest in AI. Honestly, the entry barrier to AI has dropped this year in a way that I've not ever seen before, and that makes me very, very excited. And so my focus today is on helping everyone take the AI opportunity that's in front of all of us, right? Whatever our background, whatever our organization does, and getting some value from that. With one important proviso, it's in the title of the webinar. Nobody wants to go bankrupt in the process. So this is really important for us at Devon, and for me personally. You know, there's so much hype out there, a lot of inflated expectations. Some of you might be feeling under pressure to deliver things that you don't feel are feasible, perhaps given the resources available to you. But given that the entry barrier has dropped, I want to share a way of thinking about AI that we've developed at Devon to help you find your way, safely and without breaking the bank. So to do that, I'll spend a few minutes at the start here to get everyone up to speed on some core concepts. This is not technical. Basically, the aim is to put AI in its place, right? Put AI in context, connect it to some things you already know about what you're trying to do with your products. With that stage set, we'll move on to a methodology you can use to identify the right kinds of opportunities to apply AI in your context, right? I'm not going to give you a list of 100 use cases that you can already just get from ChatGPT, right? The key here is to unlearn some of those cliches, right? Things that have been holding companies back. And in place of the cliches, show you some very simple steps you can apply over and over again to help AI just become part of your toolbox, right? Rather than it becoming that hammer that turns everything into a nail. And then to demonstrate in that practice, I'll apply the methodology to a few examples from my own experience and from Devon's experience as well. Hopefully that starts to get you thinking about opportunities in your own products. And then we'll spend the rest of the time at the very end on a free-form Q&A, but we're also going to have Q&A throughout kind of every section as we go. So please use Slido for that. Tom put the link in the Zoom. You can also use the QR code. It'd be great if you can test it out now, just so we get a feel for who's in the audience right away. Grab your phone, go to the link, scan the code, or use the link from Zoom. Tell us about your background. And we've done a very blunt breakdown, which I'll show you. I'll show you here, just to get a feel for who's out there today. A lot of technologists, okay. Yeah, one product person. That's good. 2 product people. Even though it says 20%, I think we can all guess. 3 product people. Excellent. Okay, we're achieving product technology balance and liftoff. We're almost there. Just one more product person. Yes, if we add the business person to the product person, we're at the ratio that we want it to be, which is fantastic. Thanks for that. So Slido, right? You can also use the Q&A function there. Ask questions as you go. As I said, I'm going to pause as I go throughout to make sure keep this as interactive as possible. So I'll start the first section, as I said, with the core concepts. And we'll start with one of the toughest questions of all. What actually is AI? A lot of people calling a lot of things AI right now. I'll spare you the full debate, right, over definitions and boil it down just to what I found useful in my own experience, right? So what I found useful is that we need a workable definition of what is intelligence, right? To know what kinds of capabilities are we putting in this bucket, right? If we don't have a workable definition that makes sense quite broadly, it's really hard to even understand what we're talking about. And we also need a workable definition of artificial, right? So that we actually understand how AI is different than human intelligence. Keeping things very simple and very general like this, as I have on the screen, to begin with, it can really help take the hype down a notch and put AI in its place, right? AI is just a different way to deliver an outcome. If you don't know the outcome you want, if you don't know what your product is, if you don't have a strategy, if you don't have customers, if you don't know what value you're trying to create with your product, unfortunately, AI is not, a silver bullet. It's not the latest silver bullet, right? That's just going to solve all those difficult problems. What it can do is help us scale the ability of acquiring knowledge and skills in different contexts. And I'll show you how we can get our head around that in a bunch of different product contexts in a moment. Now, the downside of such a simple general definition is that it does immediately raise another set of questions, right? Haven't we been doing AI for ages? What's different now? Why do we need yet another term? So I get that question a lot, right? How you answer it depends a little bit on where you sit in the ecosystem, but for us at Devon, this is how we break it down, right? So if you think AI is just the latest big data, then you didn't really understand what big data was. So big data was literally just about capturing, storing, processing more measurements of things that you care about, right? No value is created directly by having more data because no action automatically follows from just, I have 10 or 100 or 1,000 times as much data as I did before. Nothing happens once you've done that. You have to do something with it, right? You have to build a product on top. Otherwise, what was the point, right? So AI is not big data, right? You might be like me and have had some very formative years working with data with a very statistical mindset, perhaps applied through something you might have called analytics. You might have been an analyst like me in the past. The difference with much of that kind of work is that it's very exploratory and investigative, right? On purpose, right? It's trying to understand things that you don't understand in a business, right? If you have some data, You do need to look at it to know what you might do with it to create value. But when you analyze data, again, the actions don't naturally follow from your analysis, right? You've done something with the data, you've maybe answered some questions, but what you do with it to create value is not automatic, right? Sometimes you give your analysis to someone else and hope that they do something, right? Another group of people, right, might come from machine learning. So that's a discipline doing many of the same things as statistics, right, but coming out of computer science. And that kind of approach is just about having computers learn patterns in data to make predictions, right? We're getting much closer to actions, right, when we're talking about predictions. But the way I like to make this fit in my head is that machine learning industrializes statistics and analytics so that we can scale it up, do a lot more of it, right? Maybe across more customers with more data, more precision, perhaps. Again, it's not quite closing the full loop to action. Which brings us to AI, right? Which actually requires doing some of all of the above, right? But tying them together in this coherent whole, right? That creates value reliably and is robust to change over time. If you remember that definition of intelligence, it's not just learning something and repeating that over and over again. It's having some ability to adapt to changing context, to changing requirements without explicit programming. So to us at Devon, AI is about closing that loop from data to action, right? So we hold 4 core beliefs about AI. It has to create value, right? All technology should create value, but let's say it again because people sometimes forget. AI should help us win, right? That's why we've called this webinar series the AI Advantage, right? Let's not just do it because other people are doing it or because we think it's cool or it's the latest thing. Let's do it so that we can win something, right? The race for more customers, customer satisfaction, whatever that might be. But let's not just have it as an add-on, a bolt-on. Let's use it to actually create some advantage, right? We believe it can get very expensive, right? I opened the webinar talking about how the barrier of entry has lowered, right? It's cheaper than ever to get started with the technology. Doesn't mean you can't burn a lot of money. And so we'll talk in a little bit about how you might burn money and how you might avoid doing that. And AI can be a black box. So this is an interesting sort of sentence because what we're saying is what everyone tends to say, yeah, AI can be a black box, right? It can be difficult to understand or impossible for humans to understand how it works. But that's okay, actually, in some contexts. For some use cases, black box AI is appropriate. For some use cases, it's not. But we shouldn't use the fact that some AI is a black box and therefore some AI is inappropriate in certain circumstances as a reason not to do AI or to be scared about it. So I hope that helps you understand how we think about AI, how it's different than these other 3 things you might hear bandied about, but how doing it well actually relies on doing all of those things as well. So just to illustrate a few of the differences I explained, let me run through some toy examples, right? So here's a chatbot. Chatbots are not new. Chatbots were around a while ago. So chatbots were around in 2016 even. So is this AI? Well, we might assume it's AI because someone put a picture of a robot there, right? And we see this chat interface. But if you look at what's on the left, this could actually be a person on the other side, right? And we wouldn't know. Or there could be some very basic rules like hard-coded and pre-programmed into the system, which would reduce its adaptability. It might be able to book that thing for us, but if we ask it to do something else, or if we ask it to change the booking, maybe it falls down, right? So this could be AI, maybe not. We would need more information to know. Let's move on to another example, right? Here's a system automatically classifying images, or at least splitting the image, right, into people and objects. Very classic application of machine learning, right? Computer vision. And if what's on the screen was the goal of the overall product, we might say this is AI, right? But we would want to see signs of reliability and adaptation, as well as clear actions following on. Or if we don't see those, do we just have a machine that can identify exactly 2 kinds of things on this bridge in Rome, but when you take it to a different city, it can't do anything else? And finally, most of us probably agree that this product is full of AI. So interestingly, Tesla's very much still experimenting with using AI to actually drive the car autonomously, right? Perhaps you've seen some of those videos. But even from the beginning of Tesla's journey, AI has been used in lots of different parts of the vehicle, right, to achieve much more humble goals, like optimizing battery charging or navigation or recognizing objects on the road, but short of having the car drive itself. Right? So what these examples show is that what we think of as AI really depends on how far zoomed in or out we are, where we put the boundaries of the product that we want to improve with AI. And that's really the first key takeaway I wanted to get across today, right? Again, we can't say this enough in my experience about any new kind of technology, but especially about AI. AI can enhance your product. You do not need to build an AI product. Naturally, every wave of new technology, people latch on to the new thing, and they might let that shiny thing define the product. You might be old enough to remember when phones started getting the internet, and there was a huge rush, don't know if you remember this, to build entirely separate mobile-friendly websites, and all kinds of platforms and technology sprung up to make it easy to boil your real website into a mobile website. And the experience was just terrible. But then the same thing happened with apps, right? We need an app. Even if we don't have a digital product, we need an app. And then the same thing happened with cloud, and it even happened a little bit with big data. Let's collect all this data, let's store it, let's process it. What for? Well, I don't really know. And there's a risk, right, of the same thing happening with AI. So the lesson we should learn from all those previous times is the fastest way to break the bank, if you were looking for a way, if you're here to, how can I burn money as fast as possible? It's to think about AI as the product, right? Instead, AI can become a useful part of your product, right? There's one important exception here, right? So if you are tuning in and you're from OpenAI or Google or Meta, or you're a researcher, when you're really on the leading edge, then perhaps AI actually is your product, right? So for OpenAI, their products are AI products, right? But for 99% of organizations, AI is just here to enhance the products that we have. So if you're with me so far, you should be wondering, okay, I believe, Sean, I'm not building an AI product, or I was, and now I'm not. I need to pivot. How can I use AI to enhance my products? Well, let's look at what a product is, right? And we'll focus on digital products to make things a little easier. We can talk in the Q&A about different kinds of products, or if you don't have products at all, right? So any product, if we boil it all the way down, right, starts with a customer and their needs, right? If you don't have customers, or if you have the wrong needs, your product won't sell, right? And this is actually equally true, or sometimes even more true, if the customers of your product are in the same organization as you, and they don't even pay you for the product. Selling a free product to people who have to use it is one of the hardest things you can ever do, right? So this does actually apply even within the same business, right? But to allow customers to meet their needs, right, you're gonna need to take something from them and give something back, right? And the way that we do that is with an interface of some kind. That interface will surface different product features, right? Those product features connect to some kind of supporting processes in the product to get different jobs done, right? I click this button, it uses this process to go and do something. And those processes, right, in a digital product, they just generate and consume data. And then because we're talking about a digital product, if it's going to do other things in the world, if it's going to affect other products, or whether it be that software or hardware, some data needs to pass in or out. So I hope that's not too contentious or complicated. That was kind of the minimum set of things that we would need to describe what actually is a product. Now let's start thinking about how AI can enhance a product like this, right? Classic enhancement that everyone knows about and has experienced, right, is to actually help your customers better identify their needs in the first place, right? By using maybe data that you've captured about their prior interactions to recommend what they should do next, right? This is what recommendations are. And we've all experienced a kind of moment of, oh, I didn't know I needed that, but now I definitely need it, right? When this is done well, that's what that feels like, to have a product recommend something within itself. That's an amazing feeling when it works. But we've also had I already just bought that, so why are you recommending it to me again kind of moment as well when it's not. So we're all familiar with it, and we've all seen it done well, and we've all seen it done poorly. I mentioned chatbots earlier, right? And how the first wave of those often failed to deliver value. Sometimes it's because it was just actually humans in the back end, right? Thanks to the capabilities of large language models, right? And the fact that ChatGPT, right? The interface is chat. Everyone is interested in improving interfaces with chat. But it's important not to forget that simply allowing a user or forcing a user to push exactly the same buttons, except typing words, can actually make the experience worse, right? Lots of products that are great to use, lots of digital products that are great to use because they have a simple interface and you press simple buttons. Chat may feel cool, but if you're actually forcing people to now explain what they want to do in words, you may have actually made the experience worse, right? So to leverage chat or conversational AI, as it's sometimes called, to enhance the interface, right, actually requires addressing much more across your product, right? All the way from what customers actually need, all the way through features, processes, data. And then one of my favorite ways to start small, we'll talk about this a bit more in a moment, and to prove value quickly is to actually focus on something that your users might never see directly, right? Which is data quality under the hood, right? So validating data inside a product is one of the most human resource intensive tasks, one of the most repetitive tasks. It's often viewed as thankless work, whether you have a team of operators doing that in your own company, or whether you push that burden onto your customer, right? Validating data, it makes a huge difference to how a product runs, but no one really likes doing it, okay? Right. So we'll come back to this idea specifically, but here it's just illustrating the point that by focusing on a narrower span of these product components, maybe we can actually start seeing value from AI at lower risk of breaking the bank, right? But still generating some significant value. So I hope those few examples, right, reinforce what I said earlier. Almost none of us are building AI products, right? We are using AI to enhance our products. And we can actually boil that down even further and make it even more direct, right? To 5 words: AI is not a feature. So that might be very hard to hear. At least 1,000 marketing interns just fell off their chairs because they've been told by someone to write something on a website about the AI features of the product that they're promoting. The good thing is they're doing that efficiently. They're probably using ChatGPT to write the same old text that everyone else is about how conversational AI is the new feature in this product, right? But if you're kind of with me so far, that may not be the best way to use AI to enhance our products. It might break the bank for no discernible value. Maybe a different group of people are really disturbed by what I'm saying, right? Because maybe what I've just said reveals a bit of a weakness in their product strategy or their business strategy, right? So if you don't have a strategy to increase the value of your product to your customers, right? If instead you take the easy way out, as you may have done with big data and apps and cloud, and say, let's build some cloud features, let's build some AI features, it's not going to work, right? And you might burn a ton of money without anything as a result. So a few points follow neatly from that conclusion, right? If AI is not a feature, but it's features, right, that drive the customer experience and the value of our products, the good thing is you just need to measure its contribution to your product the same way you measure anything else that enhances the product, right? So, which is through its ability to improve those components, right, and the links between them, right? Does using AI within one of those components or between those components, does it make customers happier? Does it make them use it more? Do they pay more money? Can you run your product cheaper? Or can you scale its usage faster, right? Those are completely universal questions about what makes products valuable. And AI's job is just to make it easier to deliver those kinds of things, right? So all very easy questions to throw in your face. I think you're here today because you believe in some way that AI could help you unlock some of those kinds of value, customer happiness, usage, value in terms of what they pay, or running your product cheaper. And we'll get to that, how to search for those opportunities in a second. But I just wanted to check in. I saw a few questions perhaps pop up already. Okay, couple of hard
It's time
ones.
for questions. Yeah,
Good.
the top one that we have with the most votes is about the most common AI feature that is being leveraged in the products. And so, Sean, do you have any perspective? The meetings that you have with the customers, what is the most common feature that you can see, and what could be the first one to start with?
Yes, good. That's what we'll get to in a second. What's really pleasing is that in the conversations we're having with customers, not many people are jumping straight into the deepest end of let's put chat on all of this. People are asking questions. How do they make it smoother to use, right? And how to make it smoother to operate? So we'll get to some specific answers. For me, a feature that's both common and which I enjoy is anything that helps me complete a step in the product, right? Get to my objective faster. So in the next section, I'll talk about specific ways to do that. And actually all of the 3 examples are based on, common features that people are leveraging right at the start without having to go and build anything crazy. One came in on the Zoom Q&A. Being completely honest, I have no idea how to even begin this process for my company. There's a lot of pressure to do something with AI, but I'm not sure where to even begin. Well, you're in the right place because that's what we'll get onto today. Okay, so with those concepts kind of set, we can move on to this search, right? Where can you look? What are people doing, and how can you learn from what other people are doing for your own product? So I'll lay out here a methodology that we use at Devon to find these opportunities for our customers. Section 3, I'll apply it to some real-world examples as well. So the methodology we've built leans heavily on this fantastic book. If you haven't read it yet, get a copy, right? I've been working in this space for quite some time. This book really helped me get some things straight in my head, right, in terms of a business perspective and how to link AI to value, right? And the way that AI does that, AI makes predictions cheaper, right? It's not magic. It's not replacing humans necessarily. It doesn't fix completely broken value proposition of your product. It's just a technology for making predictions cheaper. And the usefulness of predictions, right, is that they can steal from the future. They can buy us time from the future, right? Anything we want to predict about anything, right? If we can do that sooner, or we can do it better, or we can do it both, right? We can make a decision faster. In product terms, we can get our customer on that happy path on the road to valuing our product faster. And the good thing about this becoming cheaper, especially recently, is when something is cheaper, you can do relatively more of it, right? Some of the examples I'll share of things I've done 2-3 years ago, the team that I had and the resources that I had at the time meant that I had to stop at a certain level of sophistication of AI, which also meant a limit on the value that I could deliver with that, right? The great thing about all this new technology becoming massively more accessible is more and more product teams are going to find it easier and cheaper to make predictions about things, right? Of course, there are costs, people, process, technology. What if you're wrong? What if it doesn't integrate, right? And that's what everything that follows is kind of adding value onto this book, is how you can actually apply that in the real world. So AI makes predictions cheaper. Predictions can make our products better. What kinds of things can we predict? Well, the good news is we can predict anything that we're uncertain about, right? Everyone knows a stakeholder who makes predictions without any data, right? So anyone can make a prediction about anything, right? And what AI allows us to do is to build prediction machines that make this cheaper and more reliable. Now, when I say the word prediction, right, often we naturally focus on the future, right? Predictions. Just that word kind of conjures up crystal ball, seeing the future, seeing what is going to happen in the future, right? And sometimes it's the far off future, right? Forecasting or predicting the churn, or even just predicting, when will this person next use our product? When will they adopt this new feature, right? It's very natural when we think of prediction to think about those kind of far off future occurrences or events. It's a very famous quote by Niels Bohr, a Nobel laureate in physics, father of the atomic model. Prediction is very difficult, especially if it's about the future, right? So some of these things can be really hard to predict. The good thing is there's many things that are not very far off in the future that we also have uncertainty about, right? So we have uncertainty about the future because it hasn't happened yet. That's mechanical, that's automatic. We can't change that unless we have a time machine. But we also have lots of uncertainty about things that are happening right now, right? Like, is this customer's date of birth correct? Right? In some products, that is very important data to have correct, right? Or we would love to know what actions are our customers trying to take, but we aren't quite sure just by tracking their steps that they're doing something unusual, right? We don't quite know. It's happened in the past. We're not trying to predict what they'll do next. You can also think of that as a prediction. Anywhere where we are uncertain, whether it's the future, whether it's the present, whether it's the past, we can predict to overcome that uncertainty. And what's become very popular over the last year is predict what's the next word in this sentence, right? Deep down, large language models, it's not quite sentence or word, it's actually something called a token. But when ChatGPT is filling out that thing, or Bard, or any of these products, they are literally just predicting the next most likely thing in a sentence, right? They're not talking about the future. And the good thing is, what all predictions have in common, right? Whether they're big, small, complicated, easy, future, past, present, all they do is they take data that we have and they give us back some data that we don't have, right? And if that prediction is useful to us, it's because that data we get back reduces our uncertainty, right? So the key insight, especially for the product people out there, is when you ask people to tell you what AI is, they're going to give you lots of stuff about supervised and unsupervised learning and unstructured data and structured data, and that's all fine. The whole point of all of that is to take something that we don't know, something that we are uncertain about, and increase our certainty about that. That's very simple. Okay, so where are we going to apply this power of prediction, right? I said before, we need to search cheaply and choose wisely, right, when it comes to enhancing your product using AI. So let's think about any product development process, right? How do products evolve? So given any starting point, we can kind of do one of three things, right? We can keep the product pretty much as it is, essentially the same features of the product, and we can try and preserve or increase its value through incremental improvement to what we already have, improve the existing feature set, improve the existing product. Or we could add a feature, right? So when the keypad replaced the dial pad on telephones, that really hadn't changed for decades or maybe 100 years beforehand, right? And that new feature enabled some new things to happen, right? Still the same product, really. It allows you to accomplish fundamentally the same things, but there's a new feature that makes some new things possible. And finally, we could take the product we have and we could change something quite existential about it, right? So we could remove the need for it to be plugged in to anything in the wall and launch a new product, right? Maybe it looks a bit like and does a lot of the same things as the old product, but when we change something existential about our product, it gives us the chance to launch a new product, right? And we need to think about applying AI in just the same way that we would think about developing products, right? So if we want to benefit from AI in our products without breaking the bank, it probably makes sense to start on the left, right? If you go straight to AI is here, we think we're really good at it, let's build a new product, you're kind of falling into that trap of AI is the product. Again, if you're OpenAI or Google or Meta or Microsoft and you can compete with them, good, go ahead. Almost everyone else, right, needs to think about it in a different way, which is squash all the things you might do about AI just into this concept of prediction. Once we do that, as I'll show you in a second, we have a really easy way to find all kinds of opportunities to enhance products in ways that deliver ROI much faster, especially by improving what we've already have. And once you get good at that, then it makes sense to move on. So again, if you came here to learn the magic answer of how you go straight to the right, with no money, no investment, no time, no people. Sorry, I don't have the answer for you. What I do have is a very easy way to get good at using AI, to get good at using this new tool alongside your other tools to improve existing products, get some practice doing that, then think about how to use that to launch new features, and then maybe one day get into the new product space with AI as a critical enabler. So let's just go back to those product components I walked through. And let's see how AI can help us improve a product without developing any new features, right? So your business sponsor, and if you're a product manager, hopefully that makes you happy, right? It may deflate you a little bit because you're like, oh, I thought AI was going to change my product entirely, right? The good news here is without developing new features, without having to do crazy new things that you may not have practice with, AI can already make a difference. So let's just return to that data quality example, right? So imagine you're building any kind of digital product that comes anywhere close to transferring funds between people, right? Maybe it's a bank, maybe it's not a bank, but it's trying to be a bank. In any country in the world, and especially across borders, if you are building anything that looks like this is transferring money from one person to another, right, you are now regulated in some way. Congratulations. So that means you'll be obliged by someone somewhere to undertake know your customer checks, right? Not just when they sign up, but over time, to keep regulators happy, you'll need to show how you are reconfirming that customers are eligible to use your product. So the problem there is, how do we know that our customers are old enough, for example, to use this product based on the regulators' rules? And we can reformulate this as a prediction problem very simply. We just need to pretend that we don't know the customer's date of birth at all, and then use some approaches that I'll talk about in a second to try and basically guess their date of birth from the other data that you hold about them. And then you can compare those predictions that you've made to the date of birth that you do hold. And now you've improved the value of your product, right? Because you can avoid sending a please update message to every single customer, or even worse, you can avoid annoying your support or operations team by having them manually check every customer, right? Simply by prioritizing the list of people who most need a know your customer check of that kind. So the value of this product improvement is easy to quantify in terms of time saved and customer annoyance reduced. When you make that improvement, it's realized almost immediately. And that doesn't just apply to improving date of birth, data quality. It could be anything. And I'll share an example from my own experience later on. So anytime you hear someone say that they can't use the product or scale the product, or some feature is blocked by poor data quality, without developing any new feature, you could already be using AI to improve data quality, improve the value of the product in a very, very lean way. Let's take another example, right? So perhaps you have a product that is complex for good reasons, right? Some products are just trying to help people do very complicated things, right? And it can be difficult to represent all the workflows in your product neatly into some kind of menu system, right? We've all experienced products where we don't use a particular set of features quite often enough. So for me, certain travel booking systems, I'm really good at the things that I use often, and then I'm not so good at the things that I don't use so often. And I always end up Googling, well, how to. So the blunt and maybe the silly approach here is to just put AI right in someone's face and have them explain, what are you trying to do, right? Have a chatbot pop up over the screen. What are you trying to achieve, right? And that, for me, that would really annoy me. But if you're running a digital product, you're actually already measuring how users interact with your product, right? You observe them work along a path. And you might observe me working along a path, vanishing for a bit, and then coming back and doing something that wasn't on the path that I was on. And then you know how I resolve it, right? So a much subtler and cheaper application of AI would be to simply watch for users following a path that is likely to lead to that, leaving your product and Googling something, and then popping back. If you can, instead of sending up that annoying chatbot window of tell me what you're trying to achieve, if you just say, are you looking for this at just the right moment, you will make a customer of your product potentially very happy by anticipating their needs. Again, data that you already have, some very simple AI approaches to delivering that. And one more for good measure, right? Who's ever used a digital product and one of the features didn't work as you expected, right? It happens to us every day. If you haven't somehow, try booking flights or using any other digital product where you hand over large sums of money, right? And you'll understand how much anxiety this can cause when it doesn't work. Just the other day, I was booking a personal flight on a major UK airline website, and the payment just didn't go through, right? No explanation except try again later, right? Which is what you really want to hear, that you rack up more and more credit card bills, rebooking potentially the same flight over and over. The underlying cause of this, right, in a product is a mismatch between what the features want to let the customer do and what the supporting processes can actually allow, right? And this mismatch is why users typically get back these short or confusing error messages, like try again later. Again, you could set a lot of money on fire, get a big AI bazooka and just explode this problem, or you can be really smart, right? The source of uncertainty here that makes it hard to provide good explanations of errors is that many things could have gone wrong, right? Paying for a flight, a lot of things are actually happening under the hood. Many things could have gone wrong. But many of those things that could have gone wrong are documented somewhere in your company, in your FAQ, somewhere, right? So instead of making customers Google the error, get distracted, leave your product, maybe go to a different product, what LLMs actually might allow you to do is to reduce their uncertainty about what has happened. Not all the way to zero, right? 100% accuracy, perfect outcomes is not a really good benchmark to set when we apply AI. But maybe you could provide the top 3 most likely reasons in a readable format based on data that you already have. So those are examples that I've seen people doing. Those are things I wish people were doing more of, very simple things. Let's zoom out from those examples to see what they have in common and generate a checklist, right, that you could use tomorrow, today, right, to help you identify some opportunities, right? So first, we need a problem worth solving. Again, we're talking about products. Right? So when we're looking to improve products, let's actually solve a problem, right, rather than just build meaningless things that don't add any value. AI is not a feature. It's just a set of tools that maybe help us solve problems in different ways. All the examples I just gave, the underlying problem is probably something you should already know about. It should already be in your data or in your feedback, somewhere in your backlog. So again, bad news, good news. Bad news is AI is not some magic wand here. Good news is many of your opportunities to apply AI in this way to improve an existing product, the list of problems you could be solving is already known to you, right? No new work. It should already be in your backlog. What AI is adding is a new way of solving those problems that may have kept those things below that magic line where the backlog doesn't get built, right? Okay, if we've got a problem that we could potentially solve, but thanks to a new kind of technique, we do need some data around that problem. Again, not any new news here. You need some data and it needs to have maybe some kind of signal about the problem. But don't fall into the trap of thinking that you need perfect data or all the data, right? I'll show you in a minute how even the examples I was talking about, sometimes you need surprisingly little data to use very simple forms of AI to create high value very quickly, right? So don't fall into that trap of, oh, until my data is perfect, I can't do any of this, right? There's a lot of people out there saying that, right? Don't use any AI until your data is perfect. That's kind of a bit stupid, right? And then you also need some AI technique, right? The good news is your AI technique could have been invented last year or 50 years ago or 150 years ago. You do not need to reinvent any new AI techniques, especially at this stage of enhancing your existing products. And then the last bit, the hard part, right? The first 3 things are relatively easy. You've already got the problems in your backlog, you already have the data, and someone else has already invented the AI approach that will help you tile these things up and improve your product. The hard part is, how do we quantify the value from reducing that uncertainty using AI, right? So when you're looking at enhancements, it may be tempting to go after the so-called low-hanging fruit, right? Oh, there's this massive apple right within reach. Lots of stories about how that didn't work out for the person who grabbed that apple, right? So favor things that are easier to quantify, even if they are less valuable, right? Because at this stage, this is about getting good at using AI, not about changing the world with AI. So let's pull all that together around the examples I spoke about, right? We have the data quality example, this kind of needs mapping and pathway example, and then this example about how you could enhance a product by explaining errors better. In every case, it's really easy to reformulate the product problem into an uncertainty problem, right? Confirming date of birth is a pain, right? And we don't know who really needs it. Pathways through products are confusing, right? Because they don't know how to proceed. It's too costly to explain every possible error in full detail, right, to the people who don't know our product. In every single one of those cases, we already have data that can resolve that uncertainty, right? It can help a human do that. And the trick is to find the right AI approach that allows us to scale the ability of a human to look at, everything else we know about the customer and say that date of birth is wrong or right. Or you got lost for this reason, or the reason that the product's not working is this or that. So in all these cases, first one, the data you need to predict your customer's date of birth and compare it to what you have. You already have that data in a database. Helping customers not get lost as they work through your product. You're already tracking how they go through your product. Why do things go wrong on the product, right? A lot of the knowledge is in your support ticket database, your knowledge database, right? You already have the data to do this. And then the great thing is you have a range of AI techniques that you can apply, right? So for the data quality example, you can use very old, tried, true, trusted techniques, linear regression, random forest. There's dozens of ways that you could turn the data you have into a resolution of that uncertainty, right? And make your customer happier. The needs mapping, it's a little bit trickier because you're trying to predict sequences, right? Again, very simple, blunt ways of just doing proof of concept on that, and very complex ways if you wanted to work up to that. And even explaining errors, right? There are some very old, well understood ways of doing that with similarity searching. This is where large language models can actually help do that potentially a lot better. And in all of these cases, right, the value of prediction is reducing that uncertainty. Who do we need to check? Date of birth. How do we help customers be confident that they're working towards their goal in our product? And in the error and explaining errors example, the value here is actually reducing uncertainty about what is the problem itself. When I tried to book those tickets twice and I just got kind of a white screen, it's quite scary, right? If even just providing 3 things that could have gone wrong massively reduces uncertainty and anxiety and makes me happier with that product. So you can just, we'll send the slides out later. You can just use that template, right? As you go through this exercise of finding enhancements. Boil it down even further, these powerful questions, right? So where is uncertainty causing the biggest problems in my product? What data do we already have that could help, right? We're intentionally scoping down to things that are going to be easy to deliver. And which AI technique can we apply easily? So that was the heaviest kind of blast of content in your face. We're going to revisit again when we talk about new features and new products. But I'll pause there and just see if there's any new questions that have come in on Slido.
Still the one leading the roster is about the AI features. There was a good one about how to find your own use case. Is there any method that can help you to define what could be best AI usage for you? Do you have any comment on that, Sean?
I mean, so copying other people that you like is a great idea. So if you think about the products that you use, or if you go and use a competitor's product, or again, if you just go and look at the feedback that you already have from existing customers, and then think about, is anyone here articulating a problem where the root cause is uncertainty? And then think about, if you're in a B2B kind of product space, maybe think about a similar kind of challenge in a B2C space, right? There could be an app on your phone that does a great job of resolving this uncertainty. And sometimes that's a very simple way to do. You can also, you can ask ChatGPT or any other chatbot-driven kind of AI, general purpose AI. You get a long list, right? But what that doesn't know is what are customers already complaining about? Where is the friction already in? And you may not want to share all that, or maybe you do, maybe it doesn't matter. But the whole point of starting with enhancing your existing product is that if you go out there with this lens of how can I use AI to reduce uncertainty, you should trip over opportunities almost immediately. Right? Or you've got a really simple product and everything's fine, and then you have a different conclusion, which is that you don't need AI at all.
And I think on top of that, usually it will not work in a way that I have AI. How I can use it in my application? It should be the other way around. Like my biggest pain point is XYZ.
Yeah.
Can I leverage AI in order to resolve that problem? Right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, if you're a product person, if you're developing features on the technology side, you already know where these frictions are, right? The value add of AI is a new way to go and solve some maybe really hard problems. So each of those examples that I gave, solving those manually or like programming a full decision tree of every outcome for those little examples is actually really costly and a real pain, right? To actually do any of those three things with no AI could be really painful and expensive, which is probably why it's always been below that magic line. It's always in 2 sprints after this one, right? We'll get around to that. Yeah. So where I would look specifically is below, what are the things that are constantly stuck in 2 sprints out that we know would really unlock something? And can we use a reformulation of that problem as an uncertainty problem, data that we already have, and a simple AI technique to just reduce the cost of developing that change? Okay, so that's a bit about the way forward, how you can use AI to improve existing products. So imagine you do that a few times, right? Imagine you've done that a number of times and you're really starting to get confident taking problems that you already know about, where the root cause is uncertainty, using AI to bridge that gap, right, in some way. What if you want to instead use AI to develop a new feature? So remember, AI is not a feature itself. So what I mean here is that you will develop a new feature of the product for which AI will be a fundamental enabler, right? Or to put it another way, the cost of this new feature would be too high without using AI. Again, it could be something you've wanted to build for a long time, but if there was some uncertainty problem in the middle of that feature that needed to be solved to make that feature happen, it may have been too expensive, and that's maybe the reason that you haven't done it, right? In these cases, the mechanism, right, that AI is helping increase product value is exactly the same, making predictions cheaper. We're just applying it in a different way, right? So instead of using predictions to reduce the uncertainty in what you already have and make these incremental improvements, you're using them to actually unlock something that you don't yet have. Maybe it's something your competitor has. Maybe you'll want to pull ahead of your competitor. But this is a new set of features, right, where AI is allowing you to go to that space. And we already saw absolutely classic example of this earlier. Remember what I said about recommendations? They're predictions of what a customer might need based on data that we already have. They could be predictions about what they need next week or next month, or what they need right now, right? That's just to reinforce predictions aren't always about that distant future, right? The key is until we generate those recommendations, put them in front of the customer and measure the outcome, we have uncertainty about what else they need. We could call them. We could have someone look at their purchase history and make a guess, right? By generating predictions this way using AI, we drive down uncertainty for us and for them about what they need. And when that gets to enough level, they buy something else or they use something else, right? Again, you can do this with humans, but it might not be worth the effort, right? What AI is unlocking with any kind of recommendations that you provide is the ability to do this at scale. So in this context, recommendations are definitely a new feature, right? And so that big arrow that I had is not quite right. Jumping all the way from data to customer needs, right? The value here of doing AI right is potentially bigger, right? If we can get people to buy more stuff or use more stuff in our product, that's way beyond incremental improvement, right? So the potential value, right, of using AI to develop new features is much higher, but so is the complexity, right? It actually involves, again, working through all of these different components of a product. So the number one reason why product teams fail to get value from AI is by jumping straight here instead of looking in the backlog, right? If incremental improvement is something you've become really good at, then you're already good at using AI and building AI into your product across all these different components. And now you're ready, and it's going to be safer to invest in AI to power new features. Another idea for how you might use AI to deliver a new feature. So many products in the B2B space require integrations, right, to get their full value. Maybe you've used a CRM or an ERP or any other three-letter acronym kind of solution. So the core value of that product was very obvious always to the person in your organization who bought it. You know, manage our customer relationships, or plan our enterprise resources, or digitize our point of sale. As soon as you needed that system to help do something else, right, like talk to one of the others, things can get a bit tough. So if you've ever done this, you know, there's a simple 4-step process for integrating this and that, your CRM with your ERP and your point of sale. And often that doesn't work, right? Because this is complex. So you don't understand the error. So you go and you Google it and you discover many pages from the vendors repeating the 4-step process. You discover a community forum post from 5 years ago with like 100 likes that with a lot of not very useful responses. And you get like a Stack Overflow page that looks like it might work if you cut a few corners, right? So if you've ever been in the B2B space and had the job of integrating two products, you know what I'm talking about, right? So there's many reasons why a product doesn't overinvest in making integrations easy, right? Because they might be competing with the things that they want to integrate with. But it's very hard, at least for me, to find a company these days that doesn't want to move to an ecosystem approach. It's difficult to find customers who don't expect migrations to be easy and standards driven, right? So imagine you were building a B2B product and you wanted to make your product more valuable in this way. You could use AI to launch a brand new feature that makes integrations easier. And I don't mean a bouncing paperclip, right, following predetermined rules. I don't mean wizards or any of those approaches that kind of put fluff around the 4-step process that's not working. If you want to launch a new feature to differentiate our product, its value needs to stand alone, right, and be recognized by the customer. Ultimately, the feature is valuable because it's replacing some frustration, or it's replacing a large system integration bill. So how can we understand whether AI can really enable this kind of new feature? Good news is, right, the questions are fundamentally the same. Right? So if you've got good at using AI to improve your existing product, it's just the same process that you have to follow. You still need the worthwhile problem, right? The need for it is probably already known to you, right? So if you know that integrating your product with other products is a pain, you will already know about that, right? It may not be as clear cut as the simple enhancement examples earlier, right? But you should already know about that. Again, the data you need, if it's a whole new feature, you might need new data, more data. It might need to be higher quality compared to the other examples. But again, a new feature of an existing product is probably going to be built on data you already have. And again, you don't need to invent any new techniques, right? The challenge of integrating AI might be trickier because this is a new feature. You're going after more value, right? Instead of just enhancing one narrow aspect of your product. But again, you don't need to invent new AI to make this happen. Even the integration example that I was just talking about, which I'll tell you more about in a second. And finally, as for any new feature, right, the way you develop new features right now, you need a business case, right? Compared to enhancements where you might have been able to sort of sneak them in, a new feature is you're going to have to convince more people, right? A really good way to test yourself on this is to ask yourself, How close can we get to the desired result without any AI at all? Right. Sometimes when you really zoom in on the question, you look at the data you have, there's a much simpler answer to that problem. Right? Maybe you just need a 5-step process on your website, and then all of the people having integration pain, well, 90% of them are now happy. Right? So the worst case, if you follow this methodology, is that you find you don't need AI at all, and it's much easier. Or you find that what AI is adding becomes very clear and easy to explain to lots of other people. So let's use exactly the same format, right, across different examples. But instead of, before we had each column, right, was a different incremental improvement to a product. Let's take that big, ugly problem of it's difficult to integrate our product with other products. And let's break it down into some sub-problems, like sub-features, right? So the feature here is integration assistance, powered by AI. Call it what you need to, right? If you think about, if you've ever done one of these kind of integrations, right, there's a getting ready stage. Do I have the stuff I need? There's actually clicking the buttons, the big buttons, I call them, going through that process. And then there's like, did it work or did it not work, or how do I need to resolve this, right? So for each of those 3 steps, again, it's pretty easy to take the challenge, right, and reformulate it as an uncertainty problem, right? So if you've ever done one of these integrations, you end up looking at documents, and you wonder if your system is configured just like the documents assume it is, but you know your product much better than the one you're integrating to if you're the customer, right? If I use Salesforce and I'm trying to integrate it to whatever, I know Salesforce more, I don't know the other thing just as well. What's the data we already have? Well, if you're the developer of the system I'm trying to do my integration from, you already know the prerequisites, right? Because you've developed the system. What you don't know is what the customer doesn't know, and what you don't know is exactly what are the requirements on the other side. But the thing you're trying to integrate to has at least published something, right? So in this case, are we ready to try and integrate these 2 systems? You have all the data to answer that question from your side, and you at least have what has been documented about the requirements from the other side. Again, the AI, you could use very simple matching algorithm of do these words, do these phrases appear on both sides, all the way up to a large language model. A large language model might be a really excellent application of comparing this. And you can probably, I've done this already. I've asked ChatGPT and Bard and other products, given these documents and these documents, can those systems be integrated together, right? It often just says yes. But what you would need to do would be to use a similar approach, right? But ultimately, you already have the data, right? This helps your, in terms of feature value and product value, this is helping your customer get comfortable about integration. AI is helping them do that. When it comes through to actually hand-holding them through the process of pressing the buttons, right? The uncertainty here is when I click that big red button, do I know what's going to happen? I know what's supposed to happen according to the 4-step process. But do I know what might go wrong? Again, you already have data on how other customers have gone through the migration pathway. So you could use a technique as simple as arithmetic, right? Dividing one number by another, all the way up to something much more complex, right? But at every stage of the process, you actually have a success rate there, right? Just showing the success rate and what influences the success rate is an extremely simple application of some very basic techniques, which would really, reduce the uncertainty of the customer going on that path. And then you might recognize that right-hand column. It's actually all the same text as before, that example about explaining error messages better, right? This is something quite interesting, right? If you want to go beyond, it didn't work, try again later, right? Which is annoying when you're trying to book plane tickets. It's annoying when you're trying to integrate systems. We can actually use exactly the same details, exactly the same approach when we were using AI to enhance the product in the first place, because the problem is the same. So this is an example where if you had used AI to help enrich the error messages that you were giving to your customers to help them, get through your product and get value faster, you could reuse that same approach. Now it's a sub-feature of a whole new feature, right, that is really adding a huge amount of value to your customers. Again, but it's the same problem. How do we break the problem down into some core uncertainty, use data that we ideally already have, and the simplest possible AI technique to achieve that value at the bottom? So because we're trying to be a bit more ambitious here, the powerful questions are a little bit upgraded, right? A few things have changed. So instead of, where is the greatest uncertainty in my product? How can I tweak that? It's where can resolving uncertainty actually unlock a new kind of customer value? In the integration example, right? If someone was hesitating to use more features in your product because they didn't know if they could integrate it with another thing they use, the value of your new feature, right? The value of AI in that feature is unlocking new value in your own product by making it easy to also get value from that integration. Again, most of the data is data that we should already have, but we might need to collect it a little more. We might need to collect it differently. We might need to generate something. And then the powerful question to ask yourself around any new feature is, what's that simplest? What are all the AI techniques we could apply? What's the simplest one? The simplest one of all being, do we need AI to do this at all? Now, in that integration example, maybe a 6-step process reduces a lot of uncertainty. At a certain level of complexity, right, there's a persistent difficulty with those kind of integrations. And it might be that you're staring down the barrel of a 100-step process with all kinds of decision trees, and that's when AI would be perfect to resolve that. Let's take a little pause. I'll take a drink of water. We'll see if there's any new questions or any more voting on existing questions that's come up.
Yeah, we've had some voting and also a few interesting questions. A new one, which could be applicable to the things that you've mentioned right now, Sean, could be about data security. Companies restricting usage of LLMs in their own organization because of the data security.
Yeah. So yeah, some of the things I started to talk about around new features could involve sending data elsewhere, right? It's important to interrogate that risk, right? Do you want to take that risk? But it's important to do that in context, right? So if your application is already in the cloud and you're using an LLM provided by, a company like Microsoft, what are you doing that's actually new, right? All of your, if your product, if your company runs on the Microsoft stack or AWS or Google or any cloud, you should feel pretty confident about sending data, maybe even sensitive data, again, depending on the use case. But especially for the use cases I've been talking about, you should feel pretty comfortable rereading the terms and conditions of those AI services they are providing back to you, right? So it is true if you're using the public free version of ChatGPT that, you really shouldn't be pasting proprietary information into that. Any free product where you haven't read the terms and conditions, you are the product. Your data is the product, right? As soon as you pay money, as soon as you read the terms and conditions, you have a different kind of contract, right? And the other misperception as well is that because of that Samsung example about they put some code in there and maybe someone was able to get it out. If we're talking about better explaining the error messages in your product based on documentation that's already on your website, what you're theoretically potentially training some AI model to do better is not really anything at all, right? Once a large language model has read 1 trillion books, the data that you're putting in it is a little drop in the bucket, right? So that's the answer. That's kind of have a go, choose a less risky area, read your contract, talk to your service provider. If you're still a little bit uncomfortable, right, you need to do something a bit more expensive, a bit more complicated, right, which is to bring something to you. Now, in those easiest techniques, the ones from 50 and 150 years ago, you can do that on a laptop, you can do that on a phone, you can do that on paper. Bringing a large language model to you is a little bit more complicated, but again, in 1 year's time, it's going to be a lot easier, right? So if ultimately you're not comfortable sending data out for those more sophisticated models, You can bring a version of those to yourselves. Right now, a lot of companies, would it really make sense to do that for the value of the enhancement or even the new feature? Maybe not. It depends, but I think I've told you the things it depends on, right? It's like, what's the true sensitivity of this data? How much do we trust Microsoft, Google, AWS? We trust them quite a lot, especially when we're paying money for something.
Yeah, plus when you're building a new solution based on AI, there are at least two ways in order to make your data secure. First of all, there is like offline version of the ChatGPT called GPTX. It will bring in some additional effort to install that inside your premises, but yeah, it's also a good way to secure data. And secondly, we can also build like this additional facade in our architecture in order to enrich the prompt with our data internally, and then also strip it out when presenting some insights to the users, right?
Yeah, that's going to become progressively commoditized already in a year. That everything, what you just said in the second case there was like, magical thinking. How can we mask some data and pass it to a thing and get it to ask questions about this data, but pass answers back? There's lots of notebooks, there's lots of products now that just let you see that in action, right? And that's about when you get into designing your solution, right? Exactly what components of AI do we need? How are we going to leverage them? You're right. You don't have to bring the whole LLM to you, right? There are ways to treat the data that you're sending out in such a way that you're just using the LLM to do what LLMs are best at, which is, here's a big, ugly thing. What does it really mean? Maybe pulling that result back in without giving away the full details of what the underlying challenge is. Right. Okay,
so let's get back to the most popular questions.
Yeah. So everyone wants to build an AI. Do we want to do another question? Yeah, let's do one more question.
Yeah, so I guess in this
you?
part you've talked about how to use AI in products. So do you have a way to say, like, what's the most popular use case that you can see? What's the best one to start? Is it a chatbot because it's the easiest one from the technology perspective?
If you want to show something, chat is good, right? But we'll talk in a moment about what's really required to make a brand new product. Chat is the example there, actually, because I've said a lot of nasty things about chat and conversational AI, but it can do some very useful things. Now, because maybe your stakeholders are already used to chat as a way to interface with things, maybe it's an easy win. But I would always start with, like, what is that challenge that's been around for a long time? What's issue number 3 from way back 5 years ago, where it's like, developing our way around that would just be way too hard, right? So this will require a little bit of sneakiness, right? Because you may not want to tell people too much about this, right? But the easy things to show in terms of interface elements, everyone can grasp them very quickly, but when they grab them, there may be nothing there, right? They might just evaporate, right? We've all used a chat interface on a product that has almost immediately sent us to a human operator, right? That will be quite a inflation popping moment, right, for your stakeholders. If you say we've just shipped a new AI feature, it's really, really amazing, and they try and do the very first thing, and it already doesn't work. And actually, in my past, we had to engineer around. We anticipated that, at least, and we had to engineer around it, and that meant pre-programming in all kinds of crazy stuff that we thought board members and their family members would put in the product. So it gets you on this crazy slippery slope where you're burning engineering time on non-features, non-value to justify the shiny thing that you put on the front. My bet is that anyone who's managing a product, if they think about what are the persistent things that stop that product getting better, there is at least one thing that should jump right out. And just as like a data person, data quality is just such an easy easy thing that a lot of people blame something on data quality, right? So if you can fix it, you can please a lot of people. You might please them all a little bit, which is not as impressive maybe as pleasing everyone with a new chat interface, but you might take away a really fundamental kind of pain. Okay, so finally the moment you've all been waiting for, right? I've tried to put you off the whole webinar, but perhaps you already have a lot of practice, improving existing products with AI. Perhaps you've even launched one or two new features where AI has actually made that new feature possible. What if you want to jump that final hurdle, right? And this, I mentioned this happily takes us all the way back to one of the examples at the very beginning, chat, right? So even when chat just looks like a standalone interface improvement, right? If you want it to do something valuable, you're actually going to have to develop a lot of stuff across all these other kind of components, right? And the reason is, if your product is great, if your product is good and customers like it, and you can't find any worthwhile uncertainty to reduce anywhere, integrations, data quality, happy path, explaining errors, and you can't find any new features to deliver, slapping a chat interface on the front of your great product where there's no uncertainty is actually going to increase uncertainty for your customers, right? Because now they have multiple ways to do things. They're going to be like, well, we have this great interface. I got everything. Think about one of those, apps that you use that doesn't promise the world. It promises this and it delivers exactly that. And then, then the company says, oh, and now you can do all that in chat, right? So anytime you give customers multiple ways to do the same thing, you actually increase their uncertainty. So I'm based in the UK. I have a thermostat device that is allegedly smart, right? When it goes offline, the app tells me, but it isn't enough to just turn it off and on again. You then have to go through a chat-like interface in the app where you're answering these different questions about what color is the light flashing, and then you wait 7 minutes for a system check, by which time you've definitely gone off and done something else, and then it magically starts working or it doesn't again. Right? So that interface, which feels very much like making the customer feel listened to, adds no value because the first thing you do is turn it off and on again and wait 7 minutes. And that actually resolves 99% of problems in all technology, right? So that whole thing on top actually just makes me less likely to recommend that product to anyone else. Another pathology of chat interfaces, right, is, it can answer one or two questions really well, and then it needs a human, right? Is your support organization ready to support another channel of incoming frustrated customers? Because that's all that chat would be doing. So again, before I say too many more bad things about chat, let me offer one way in which I think it can really increase product value, right? Which is helping you reach new customers. So when we think about our products and like we're trying to make them more efficient or valuable in themselves, which is what I was talking about with enhancing your product or launching new features, we do sometimes over-focus on squeezing support costs, squeezing cost and squeezing value out of customers you already have, right? And we should do that, right? What about the customers you don't have? Maybe there are customers you don't have who would actually want the thing you're offering, but they want to interact with it in a completely different way. In this case, AI, and yes, conversational AI chat, is actually the thing that can unlock a totally new product. And the reason to treat it as a new product is the customers are different, they have different needs. Perhaps much of the back end, right, could or should be the same, but the front end, it would make sense to treat as a completely separate product. So good examples of this are a little harder to find, but anyone who's used ChatGPT has actually experienced this already. OpenAI spent 10 years getting to today, right? And they had great products already in GPT-3, 3.5, Turbo, now 4. Using those products 1 year, 2 years ago was actually quite difficult for anyone but kind of experts, right? So it's not just the underlying AI product that has advanced in the last few years. It's that very different way of interacting with the AI that has opened up not just developers as their customers, but everyone on the planet, right? And that everyone on the planet is a huge amount of new value that they can create because they're exposing functionality, features and value to a completely new customer base. So the other example here would be the voice assistants, Siri, Google, Alexa, they use a lot of AI within those products. The products generally just help you do stuff that you could do many other ways, right? Put something in a calendar, remind me about that. What's the weather? Buy some more, products from Amazon, right? You can do that another way, right? But if you use one of those assistants, you're very likely to view Alexa as the product just as much as Amazon, right? Or just as much as the weather service. So why am I using such high-powered examples to illustrate what good AI-driven new product development is all about? It's intentional, right? Think about the resources required to deliver those kind of products. Most of us don't have those resources, right? This webinar is about getting on the road to AI without breaking the bank, right? So it's probably best, probably easiest and fastest to use AI first to enhance your existing products and then to develop new features, right? Again, don't know if it's good or bad news. The checklist changes a little bit here, at least, the first line of each pair changes a lot, right? So if you are deeply committed and you're really good at AI already and you want to launch a new product where AI is making that whole thing possible, the easiest thing you could do would be to tie that, the reason AI is valuable is it's getting you in front of completely new customers. That's some amount of new work, but someone in your business already has a plan about how they want to reach some different group of customers, right? So use that. All those examples I provided earlier, what made them easier to start with was that you already have that data. If you're using AI to develop a new product in order to get new customers, by definition, you'll have less data about them, right? So you're going to need additional data on them. You might need to collect something, right? But they're not using your product. They have different needs. AI can help a little bit like that, but to use AI effectively, you will need some data. This is, to do this well, right, is requiring a level of sophistication where the techniques you'll need are probably 1 or 10 years old, probably not 150 years old. If you're relying on AI to help you launch a totally new product, it's going to need to be quite flashy. It's going to need to do something that really gets the attention of a completely new customer base. The most important question, right, and if you've watched the OpenAI and Microsoft kind of juggernaut over the last 6 months, there are many, many startups trying to deliver the AI-powered version of something, right? Not many of them are making revenue. I'll skip the powerful questions here because there's really just one, right? Will they pay? So if you're really good at using AI to enhance existing products and develop new features in those products, and you want to make this big jump, an AI-driven, AI-powered, completely new product, it's very important to understand what people will pay for that. You are going to new customers that you don't know. Maybe they love the chat interface that you have built to surface exactly the same functionality, but maybe they expect things on the end of chat interfaces to be free or very cheap, and you're used to charging people money for that. So do check that before. So on that sober note, we'll pause for any more questions, and then I'll share a few examples from my own experience that bring this to life a little more.
We still have 5 minutes, Sean, so maybe you can go quickly through your examples, and then maybe we can focus on the Q&A, right?
Let's do that. Cool. So some examples from my past, right? A few years ago, I was working in the automotive industry. If you've worked in any business that needs to know where customers are located, you will have encountered the joys of address data, right? Location seems simple when we put GPS into Google Maps, but when you want to represent that information in a way that a post person can deliver, things get really complicated, right? So this is why that data quality example kind of appeared in my suggestions, because I've done it a number of times. I've done it a while ago. It's a very reliable way to improve an existing product. The uncertainty problem here is, where is our customer? It's a real pain with any product that's supporting a physical process. Data, do we have data? We have plenty of data. The problem was actually too much data. The same address was represented in 5 or 10 different ways in different systems. The AI techniques, we started with extremely different, extremely basic distance calculations, right, between the strings, and we worked up to more sophisticated techniques. We didn't go straight to geocoding or anything, expensive or costly. And the value was we quickly found the 20% of cases that needed a manual check. And we did all of that in a few weeks, right? And a lot of people became a little bit happier, right? No one said, oh, this product's amazing and you guys are the best in the world. But a lot of people felt less pain. Next example is actually a failure story, right? So same company, different goal, much more ambitious goal, new feature of an existing product. Can we predict the value of any car in the UK for the next 12 months? Not just today, for the next 12 months. The uncertainty problem is, we don't know all the things that are going to influence the value. We had plenty of data. We had a range of techniques, right? The challenge was predicting value out in time is very unfamiliar for the customers, right, in the automotive industry, right? So it was integrating the insight, which was valid, into that downstream decision, right, turning it into action, didn't work so well, even though the predictions were really, really good. And finally, here at Devon, we've been thinking hard about how AI can actually improve our own productivity as people who develop software, right? So we recently ran an internal hackathon. About 15 teams worked on different proofs of concept. One of the finalists actually launched a new product as a VS Code plugin, in the space of the hackathon. And this is a success story, even for a new AI-powered product, because it really focuses on an uncertainty problem, which is when a new developer joins a team, how do you know they're up to speed on your testing philosophy and how you're going to test your product, right? Data, we develop software, so we have a lot of data on that. It's code, it's tests. The AI we used was OpenAI, and the value was very easy to identify because the customer of this product is the developer themselves, trying to get up to speed, and they can get up to speed faster by using this product. And so that loop from uncertainty about, joining a new team, how do I get up to speed on how you test this kind of product, that loop is able to be closed very quickly. So just to summarize before the Q&A, AI is not a feature, right? But it can enhance features. It can lead to the development of new features, maybe even new products. The way you measure whether it's contributing something is the same as any other technology that helps you build better products. And you need to search cheaply, right? Experiment cheaply and choose really wisely what you invest in. And if in doubt, start out where it's less risky. Start out with improvements to your existing product, even improvements that are not in the interface, right? But where you can quantify the value easily. If you want to go faster, if you want to, do more, we are here to help. A couple of ways that we can do that. This session today is like a mini version of a course that we run, AI for Product Managers, right? Where we go into much more detail about how you need to think about the guts of these problems. And in that course, you work through constructed examples, and you also work through your own examples. And then also, if you want to do everything we've been talking about in a very accelerated way, we can offer you an AI Advantage workshop where we take you through this whole piece of work in an accelerated fashion to help you get to some of these answers much, much faster. Just before the Q&A, just before we go, we already have our next webinar scheduled in the AI Advantage series. Delighted that G and Colin are joining us from TUI and Predictable, respectively. G's going to talk about, going beyond being the one person doing this in your organization, right? Today was about educating you in how you can become the spark. A journey that G has been on is becoming the beacon, right? Guiding other people through this process and helping them see the benefits, right? And Colin builds a product that uses AI and external data, right? Again, today I focused on data you already have. His product uses data from their customers and external data and AI to deliver insights in the retail space. So it's a really good example of a company really doing this for real. So 12th of December, they'll be telling their stories. I'll be helping facilitate the questions then. So in any of the remaining time, are there any new questions that have come out?
we're a bit over the time, but
Mhm.
I think that the most important question to answer would be how to start the journey with AI. You
Mhm.
see a lot of hesitance in your management,
Mm.
a lot of voices around you about data security. So how to start the journey, and what could be the first example, how to start, maybe example with some tools, if you know them, Sean?
Yeah. So I think, if you're already using tools, especially if you're already using one of the clouds, right? There are tools in there. There are pre-built services on the end of an API, right? That don't require you to be an AI expert, where you can very cheaply start to try some of the things that I've been talking about. So think about what tools you already have access to, what data you already have, and please go to your backlog, right? Go to the list of known existing problems, and think about which of these actually is hiding a root cause that has to do with uncertainty. And how can one of these APIs and some of the data we already have help us just close one uncertainty gap? And whether you need to tell senior stakeholders about this or not, I wouldn't necessarily, right? I would get good at using little AI enhancements in your standard development process before you make a big splash, right? Now, that might be backwards to some people, right? But if you go out and say, oh, we want to put AI in our product, you're going to get lots of difficult questions. People are going to think that you're asking for tons and tons of money and resources up front. But if you look at problems you already know, reformulate them this way, data you already have, but just haven't used as much as you could, and tools, be it in any cloud stack or really any software stack, has ways that for anyone who's a software developer are really now just require a little bit of learning and experimentation to become comfortable with. You can start actually doing this very easily. Get really good at it, and then choose strategically when you make your big splash and ask for more money and a bigger team and all those kinds of things.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean. It was a really great presentation. Already see some good comments in the chat. There was a question about the next webinar, so we'll send you the link with landing page for the next webinar, so stay tuned. Sean, any closing thoughts for today?
No, just thanks everyone for attending. And as I said, we're here to help you navigate this process. So do get in touch if we can help you do the full fat version of this or start to integrate this kind of thinking into your product development process. More than happy to help.